Hi guys, welcome, and who dat? I'm Joe, and today I'm bringing you my final prediction for what I think our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints, are going to do in the 2023 NFL Draft. This is my video predicting who I think the Saints are targeting, who I think the Saints are ultimately going to pick after what I think the Saints are ultimately going to do. So, if you're interested in the players I like, I've gone into detail with that in my video called Mock Round Draft 2.0. At the beginning of that video, I detail who I like. And I've got long videos all month long. Who will the Saints draft? Part 1 and Part 2. Part 2 ending with my first mock. And in those videos, I break down how I feel about the players and how they'll fall and what the Saints' needs are and all this stuff. I also have a video called 5 Things You Need to Know about the upcoming draft. And in that video, I talk specifically about what the Saints like and the conditions of the contracts and the players on the roster. And I go into detail a lot about what I think the Saints are thinking and what might influence them in ways. And so it all culminates in this video. First, the Saints are probably going to trade up. Okay, we know this. It's expected. I don't even think you could put money down in Vegas and try to win, thinking you can bet the Saints are going to trade up. You'll probably owe them money because, yeah, the Saints are probably going to trade up. So who would the Saints trade up to get? We all want them to get a defensive lineman. You know, there's a few there. So I think a lot of people could be picked if we trade up. And this is the list, and I'm going to pull it up. Lots of players here. About 5 of these guys won't even go in the first round unless the Saints have something to say about it. But these are the players that I think ultimately are the option for when / if the Saints trade up. Jalen Carter's one of those guys at defensive tackle. You know, he might fall. If he falls out of the top 10, I don't know if the Saints would be willing to package the future like they do to move up and get Jalen Carter, but he's at the top of this list. Will Anderson Jr., the defensive end from Alabama, of course, probably be a top 10 pick. I did a mock yesterday on Pro Football Focus, which is the one everyone loves to use, and Tyree Wilson fell to the Saints at 29. And that's the first and only time I ever saw that happen. I actually think Wilson's a top 10 pick, and the Saints would definitely trade up to get him. Highly unlikely, though, those 3 probably go in the top 10 or something like that. And then if players start to fall past pick 15, defensive ends Myles Murphy and Lucas Van Ness, I could see the Saints packaging a 1 and a 3 to move up and try to get them. And then I'm going to mention those 4 other defensive ends. Lots of depth simulations and mocks say that these guys are going to go in the second round or later. And I think the Saints could be targeting them in the first round, including Keon White, Adetomiwa Adebawore from Northwestern, Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame, and yes, Zach Harrison from Ohio State. You know, Zach Harrison's supposed to go in the 3rd round. I don't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole. But he just feels like the Peyton Turner of this draft. Would the Saints move up to grab Zach Harrison? They might. Would not shock me. He's on this list. They love cornerbacks, too. I don't know if they'd move up to get a safety, but I think there's 4 cornerbacks here that they would be eyeballing, including Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon, the top-rated ones. Deonte Banks out of Maryland is very interesting. There's a tie with the Saints in Maryland. But I think the Saints ultimately really love Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State. And if they move up to get a cornerback, it'll probably be that guy. if he falls out of like the top 10, top 15. Yeah, I think the Saints would move up and get a wide receiver. Quentin Johnston and Jackson Smith and Jigba are the two guys, of course. And I'm going to throw Cedric Tillman in there too. I think he's better than Jalen Hyatt. I think that the Tennessee connection with the Saints is very real. And I would hate for us to trade up and get Hendon Hooker. To me, Cedric Tillman would be a safer bet at this spot, though you could probably get him in the second round or maybe later. I think Dalton Kincaid is the one tight end out of all of them that the Saints would trade into the first round to get. I believe they love Musgrave. Don't know if they'd trade up to get him in the first round. I think that they think Kincaid is a special talent. And then there's offensive linemen. There's only one true guard you could move up to get, and that's Torrance. But I think the Saints would be enamored with Paris Johnson Jr. or Broderick Jones. And ultimately, I think their favorite is the Tennessee tackle, Darnell Wright. I've got this feeling that the Saints could move up to grab him too. Those are the picks that I think are your ultimate move up to get in the first round options. And of course, if the Saints don't move up to get those players, they could always stay put at 29 and grab one of those guys. That's your complete list of who I think the Saints are targeting in the first round. Now I'm going to pull up a list of players that I think ultimately that the Saints are targeting and are going to try to acquire at some point. It's a much shorter list. And these are those players. I think these are the ones that the Saints love. I think there's a connection between coaches and these players. I think there's also the need as far as what the Saints think. And these are the players, the ultimate players. So when this draft is over, you can come back to this video and look at these players and see if I was correct. Did the Saints take one or more of these guys? Defensive end Keon White from Georgia Tech. I think that's the Saints guy. I think no matter who's there, that's the one they want. Tight end Luke Musgrave. I think he's a good pick for the Saints. I think they really are focusing on him in the second round. In the third round, they can also focus on Cedric Tillman, wide receiver out of Tennessee, with that second round pick. Darnell Wright out of Tennessee, I've also mentioned. And in the third round, I think they could focus on safety Jartavius Martin out of Illinois, the cornerback Jacorian Bennett out of Maryland, and the defensive tackle Gervon Dexter out of Florida. Those guys are targeted, I think, by the Saints in the second or third round. Those are 7 players who I think the Saints are in love with. After everything that I've done in my, little world, I think these are the guys the Saints are really targeting. Now, as far as picking who the Saints pick and when they're going to pick, I'm not quite sure about that, because if they do trade up like I think they're going to do, it could involve so many picks. And so I'm not sure exactly where the players are going to go. But here's my final prediction for the Saints draft. I think they're going to get 5 players. I think they're going to combine their first rounder and third rounder to move up in the first round and select defensive end Keon White out of Georgia Tech. That's my final prediction. Combining our first and our third to move up in the first and get Keon White. That's what I think we're going to do. With the second round pick, we stay put and we take Luke Musgrave, the tight end out of Oregon State. I think they look at him as another weapon on offense. That's going to help our quarterback, and it's a position of want/need. Pass catcher is something we want, and I think that's what the Saints do. Since they packaged their third and their first to move up in the first round, they're going to have to figure out some way to get back into the third round, because they just can't pass on Jartavius Martin out of Illinois. And I think that's what they do. Whether they package their fourth and a couple of fifths to get back into the late in the third round, something like that. and they end up grabbing Jartavis Martin. They acquire a 6th-round pick either by packaging their 2 7s or from some of the moves they've made earlier. I'm going to go ahead and say they end up with 2 more picks after the first 3 picks. So somewhere around the 7th round, 5th, 6th, 7th round, they end up taking wide receiver Elijah Higgins out of Stanford and defensive lineman Deshaun Johnson out of Toledo. I think you're going to get a small school defensive lineman in this draft. You know, it might be Broderick Martin. It might be, there's a lot of players, small school. I've mentioned all of those in past videos. But I think this is kind of how the Saints' draft's going to break down. An unknown, small school, wide receiver, defensive lineman late in the draft, maybe offensive lineman. But I think those top 3 picks are where I'm going. And that's my final prediction for the Saints and what they're going to do in this draft. I'm looking at Keion White, Luke Musgrave, and Jartavis Martin. That's what I got. That's what I think the Saints are going to do. I'm going to come back to this video for sure because I want to see if I'm right. Could be Darnell Wright. I've mentioned all the guys here that I think the Saints are targeting. So this is it. My final prediction. Let's see if I know what the hell's going on with the Saints and their brain trust. And what do I know? I'm just a lowly old Saints fan. Been suffering my whole life. My beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold. I am part of the Who Dat Nation. And I appreciate you guys being here with me. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10 for more videos about the Saints. I'm Joe. Thanks for watching. Have fun watching the draft. And who dat?